Welcome to the Leadership Journal with your hosts, Nick Helgett and Robby Woodard,
where we cover our journey, struggles, and obstacles that we have overcome, and moments in our careers that have led to growth. Here on Table Talk each week, where we break down various topics and journals of our trials and tribulations. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Leadership Journal here this week with Nick Helgett and Robby Woodard. Today, this episode, we're going to cover something that I'm calling the three worlds perspective. And I know you and I have talked a lot about this and various durations and capacities and whatnots, and you wanted to have this episode, and I've wanted to talk about this. So what are your initial thoughts?
Three worlds, write that down.
I already did. Oh, I think you mean them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's going to be a thing. So, three worlds, right? I believe in our past conversations, that first world is your team, is the team environment.
Yep.
And that, to me, honestly, my brain right directly goes to my team, the people, my direct reports, the people that make everything happen, the people that make it possible for me to have a job. What's your take on it?
So, the world number one, when we consider the different worlds itself, is how I call it the real world. The world that you walk in a store, you walk into a office building, you walk into any kind of publication company, any business that you go into, your initial take of that company, where stuff happens, that's world number one. That's where stuff is happening, integrating, becoming. That's the fruits of everyone's labors. That's where leadership has the most influence, positively or negatively. And it's impacted by world number three very heavily, which is the executive leadership world. The teams that support the frontline people, the teams that help engross and build and develop. You don't see these people in the same capacity you see the real world, because the leadership team engages 100% differently from the people performing the work. And then world number two is your personal space. And these all go hand in hand, and they all feed off of one another. But we're really going to break down in this introduction episode about the three worlds, each one individually, some talking points, some cover points, while there's a fly that attacks your face, and try to begin the conversation in this journal about this. And like you said, first thing I think of when I think of world number one is my team. Every team I've ever had, every team I've ever been a part of, every organization that I've ever been a frontline leader, I immediately think of people that I worked with, that worked with me, worked for me, worked alongside me from the floor as the frontline leader. That's the best people I think of. And it's the people that you ultimately need to focus on first. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I mean, people need to feel appreciated and heard, right? People want to know that what they're doing matters, that it's not just the mundane 9-to-5 job that nobody wants to go to. You know, what was that movie, Office Space? You know, like where nobody wants to work in a setting. And now, mind you, I've never seen that movie all the way through. I've only seen clips on Facebook or whatever, you know. And you've got this guy who's, you know, basically doing his exit interview, and he's just talking basically about how management is so disconnected from, and he's just every day is all the tasks that he does is just in service of not being fired. And nobody wants to work in that environment. So, you know, from my perspective, I want my team to want to be there. I want them to show up every day. I want them to have a, you know, I'm a firm believer that you can have fun and be productive, you know, and you can enjoy the company that you're with, because, you know, depending on how much overtime you work, depending on how that schedule looks, you might spend more time with your coworkers than you do your spouse or your kids or your, you know, your buddies or whatever person, animal, thing that's waiting for you at home in your personal life that's not work is probably seeing you less at times than when you're not there. So it's super important to make sure that your team members want to be there.
Well, and with it being, like you said, it's like where you spend the majority of your time, it's incredibly important that this is a place you want to be at, that your team wants to be at. And like you have said in some of our previous conversations, your team feels it when you're not there. And that's the leader that I've always strived to want to be when I'm not present. Not that I want my team to 100% need me. No. But like to be in a capacity where I could have helped solve their problems, but they thought about things that I've said to them or motivated them.
And they appreciate your presence.
Yeah.
They just appreciate you being there for them. You know, it maybe that day that I wasn't there, that they felt like I was, felt that I wasn't there. You know, I really felt it, is how they put it. Maybe it wasn't because of a problem. It's just the fact that, they didn't feel like they had that support there because it wasn't there. And that is very meaningful to me, to know that I've impacted somebody in that way, that positive way, that, they want me to be there when they're there. It's a neat feeling. It's a good feeling.
That's where that engagement versus micromanagement piece comes in. Because if you're a micromanagement leader, they're gonna not feel you're there. If you're a micromanager, and
they're gonna be relieved if you're not there.
They're gonna be really relieved that you've walked out for the day and you're going to take care of yourself. Cool, you're no longer my problem. Bye, get out of here. But when you're that engaged leader and you're going home, they're worried about you. They're concerned for you, or they need someone to talk to, or they need someone to help with their problems. They just need a person in the room, and you could be that person.
Yeah.
But if you're not there, then they don't have that, and they got to confide in somebody else. So that it breeds more team connectedness, but also it takes away from them from being motivated in some aspects. And it's a hard thing to deal with sometimes. And I've always wanted to be that leader where my team comes to me with things and says, hey, you weren't here yesterday. I appreciate you not being here for taking care of you, but man, it would have been nice to have you help me solve my problem last night.
Yeah.
Darn you. Like those are the fun moments, right? Yeah. And when we think about our teams and the people that are like building the business, this is where your foundation for success starts. Every leader, like you said, the reason that we're there is our teams.
Yep.
The moment that we've lost the trust of our team, the moment that they are no longer wanting to associate with us, kiss it goodbye, because you're no longer a leader. You're just a person in a position of authority without a team to lead. They're going to ignore you. They're going to not follow through with stuff, and your life has now become miserable.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on the team, depending on the environment you work in, some people, they might go to retaliation. You just never, you never know how bad it's going to get until it gets there, and you don't want to get there because you don't want to know.
No,
it's not worth it.
And I can tell you from experience, having your team physically leave the building and then come back and then have a heart-to-heart conversation with you. Granted, I was an hourly leader at that time. I wasn't a salaried leader, but being an hourly leader, having that reality check of,
it's nice that you and I both have that perspective, that hourly leader perspective.
Yours a little bit more tenure than mine.
Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
Depending on the position we're referring to.
Mm-hmm. Like mine was 10 years ago that this happened to me. So it's been a minute since I experienced the hourly leader standpoint, but yes, it is nice that we both have
stuck with you though.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely stuck with me because I never wanted to be that guy again.
Yep.
And I've tried very hard to not be that same person. And there's people that won't evolve past that. They're going to still be that kind of leader. They're going to be that negative and gruff, and no one wants to work with them. No one wants to work for them.
Yeah, but then you've got the flip side of that as somebody that's too nice.
Yeah. What's
the lack of accountability leader?
Which that'll be another conversation for some other time, is the accountability aspect, the good guy versus the bad guy, and how do you balance both?
Yep.
And there is a balancing act with that for sure.
There's a dichotomy.
There's a dichotomy. And I'm still reading that book. I'm still figuring out how to read that book amongst the other things I'm doing. But it's world number one, being the real world, being the thing that we are engrossed in the most every day, can be exhausting, rewarding, and the most incredible experience you'll get some days.
Yep.
Some of the most rewarding experiences happen.
Most rewarding and hardest, most taxing things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that can all happen in one day.
You can be having the worst day in the real world, and then something just flips a switch, and all of a sudden you've had the most incredible conversation with one of your team members, and there's no ignoring what has happened at the beginning part of the day or however duration it was, but now your day feels better.
Yep. Because
something encouraged this little glimmer of hope that has now made your day feel warmer, brighter, and fuzzier.
Now let's kind of switch gears here, and let's look at the senior leadership portion of this. So World 3,
mm-hmm.
right? So from an hourly perspective, right? You as an hourly person, whether it be the bottom person, or maybe an hourly leader, or anything in between, it's very easy for an hourly person to see, oh, that's our senior leader. That's the guy that makes all the decisions. So, as a frontline leader, what is your perspective on how do we be the middleman between senior leadership and above, and be that buffer sometimes, and that translator, and everything in between? What's your perspective?
So before we can look at specifically just the senior leaders in world number 3, the leadership world, we've got to look at everyone who's in that world.
Okay.
There's peers. When you and I were peers, there's your peers that you deal with on a daily basis, that you're involved with on the front line, that are decision makers, that are key stakeholders, that are keeping the business moving forward. Then there's your support peers, your support partners in other departments, whether it be safety, quality, data analytics, ICQA, whatever that capacity of that leadership team is that is helping the frontline succeed. And then there's your boss, your superior. There's the people that are making day-to-day decisions that the hourly workforce does not always get to see or interact with.
Yep.
And at times, it is the most brutal of the 3 worlds. Because yes, when you're dealing with the frontline teams, the real world, there could be thousands of people in the building. Meaning there's thousands of perspectives, personalities, individual moments you could have in one day over the course of your entire 12 hours, 14 hours, however long your shift is. You're bombarded with things constantly.
Yep.
But when you're involved in a leadership world, it can be cutthroat, it can be very politically driven, or it can be very energizing, very influential, very motivating, depending on who is in those positions in the organization. And there's times where you have to spend more of your day in this world because for whatever reason the business is doing really well in the real world, and you can spend more time in this world.
Yep. But
because the business is doing really well and you can be disconnected, being more involved in a toxic political environment or a enduring or a taxing environment makes it really hard to want to go back to the floor. Because when you have these tough conversations, when you've got these intense emotional moments between you and your peers or you and your superiors, you have to go back to the real world.
Yep.
How do you then filter what you've just experienced to somebody who's never going to experience that?
Yep.
That's not going to see what you just witnessed. And being a frontline leader, you being involved in both circles at one time and having your own space, showing your team members the leadership side that's negative only adds to the negativity.
Yep.
And showing them the positive is great, but you want to try to keep that as separate as possible, because there's just things that they're not going to understand or see.
So this is a tough one for me, coming up from an hourly leader to a salaried leader. I fully believe in transparency. Every influential leader that I've ever worked with, has been transparent. But when you are the hourly person, you don't know how transparent they're being. Because there's just, and I always respected the leader that said, you know what, I can't talk about that right now. It's just something we can't talk about. And I always accepted that. Great. At least you heard me. You know my perspective on this. I've got it out of my system. I can go back to doing what I'm good at and helping the department in my capacity. And it's not ruining my day anymore. So just the fact that they listened and acknowledged me, right? But with that being said, when you switch over to the salaried side and you see more of the less politically correct corporate fun stuff.
Good word. Good way to put that.
It's very easy to fall back into the hourly shoes and just word vomit to an hourly person that probably shouldn't hear half of what you just said.
No, it's not that they shouldn't. It's that they're not going to understand in the same perspective.
They shouldn't hear it from that perspective.
Yes.
I need to practice careful communication and pass that information along appropriately, not full of my bias or emotion about said situation. So that's probably been the most difficult thing for me, coming from an hourly person to a salaried role, especially how long that I was in an hourly role. 20 years is not a small amount of time. 2 decades of 2 decades of forming habits, 2 decades of forming bias, 2 decades of forming opinions about things that maybe I didn't understand at the time. And I try to be careful in saying that because I don't want to insult somebody's intelligence. It's just that because I know I would be insulted if I was an hourly person being told that. You just want to understand. Because we're all people. But when you don't have that perspective, it's really hard to wrap your head around what happens behind closed doors in some of those budget meetings or some of those meetings about the business and where we're going, where we're headed and where we need to be going, especially if it's a difficult conversation. Or you're having conversations about other team members that you're privy to, but team members aren't. And that stuff's off limits.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not off limits for them to come up to me and say, hey, what about Joe Bob over here? Are we going to follow up with them? Well, we are not. I am handling it, and unfortunately, I can't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's a hard thing to say.
And it's all about perspective and all about having that ability to separate what information should and should not be shared. Not because they don't have a right to hear it, but because it's not necessary.
It has to be the right time.
It has to be the right time, or it has to be the right information that's shared. It has to be 100% fleshed out for you to be able to feel confident enough to share the results or share the information that was shared, so that they can trust you with it, they can understand it, and that it's not coming from an emotionally driven part of you.
Yep.
And that's the hard part, is when you are dealing with the world that can be cutthroat, can be ambitious, can be very taxing and stressful, and then coming back to your team that you spend every minute with of every day, leading, guiding, mentoring, influencing them, and having that moment where you can separate between the stress and the positives. It's a hurdle that a lot of people struggle with. I myself struggle with that on a daily, because it's disconnecting that emotional switch.
Yep.
Is very hard for some people.
And if I'm giving my peer feedback on their performance, or their handoff, or whatever, and it's not a conversation that needs to be had in front of an hourly person, there's a window in my office. And I sometimes forget that. And so, of course, if I'm the person, and I realize that you guys can't see me right now, but I'm a very animated person. I use my hands when I talk. I show my feelings with my gestures. And if I feel like I'm in a safe room where I can have that conversation and I can be animated, and I forget that stupid window's there, inevitably, it without missing a beat, at minimum one person's gonna be like, so what was that about? What's going on there? You look pretty heated. I did it again.
And your team, the real world is always going to be keyed in on tension.
Your team feeds on it.
Oh yeah, because it's,
especially if they trust you.
Yeah,
they're gonna feed right into that. Oh, your relief did what to you? Oh, that's not cool, and then all of a sudden the negativity starts in, and then everybody's talking about it, and it's like, yeah, I could have handled that better.
And that is probably one of the hardest struggles that we can really dive into our next conversation. Yes. About the 3 rules, but it's being able to have that division is important for success.
It really, really illustrates how the centerpiece that you're about to talk about is so incredibly important to be able to manage the other 2 worlds, world 1 and 3.
We've covered the real world. We've covered the leader world, the political world, the key stakeholder portion of the business. But then, because it is such a taxing role, being a frontline leader, managing both of those, we have to add a third one in. That's very important for success, not only when you're at work, but when you're at home. The personal space, your own private bubble. Now, I struggled with this for a very long time, and it wasn't until someone told me, take a break, play a game of solitaire, go for a walk, go spend time outside. If it's raining, who cares? Go sit on the awning, get some fresh air. Do nothing about work for 15 minutes. And when they told me that, I realized that for about 9 years, 11 years is in the workforce, but 9 years as a supervisor, I had spent almost every part of my day going to work, going from task to task to task to task, getting done with my day and going home, sometimes forgetting to eat, sometimes forgetting to take a break, being so engrossed in what I was doing. I hit burnout so many times. It impacted my personal life in various negative ways. It made it to where I felt not motivated to do anything. It took the joy out of leading people, out of interacting with people. I'm already an introvert. I'm already the kind of person that I struggle interacting with 100 to 200 to 300 people a day, because it's very draining. But to do it on a limited battery every day, and then not realize that I was not taking care of me, oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Really bad.
I don't want to digress too far, but unfortunately, I work in a mill. And sometimes if you go outside to get a breath of fresh air, that air ain't very fresh.
It stinks a little bit. But you get my point.
Yes, I do.
As they put it, you have to set time aside for yourself.
Yes.
Whether it be a phone calendar invite that tells you, hey, you've got time set aside for yourself. It's if you have a desk calendar in front of you, you have your time blocked out. If you have a Teams calendar, an Outlook calendar, or some kind of digital calendar, you've got unavailable for 15 minutes posted on there. Now, you can post that. You can have that listed. But there's another part that you have to remember.
I've been encouraged in the past to do that.
You've been encouraged.
Yeah.
But then the part that a lot of people get wrapped into, and that I got sucked into for a long time, I tried this habit a while ago, never worked because of this. The moment you tell somebody, it's just me time, I can give it up. I can find out later.
Yeah.
You've surrendered your time because it's not important.
Yep.
And when you tell somebody that time for myself is not important, when you're in a supervisory or leadership role, you've just devalued yourself because you're taking away your own ability to recover.
Yes.
And that's bad.
You have to, the caveat to that is that you have to be strategic with that time. You cannot, if you're my peer and I'm coming to the end of my day and you're coming into the start of your day because you're working the night shift, and I'm taking my personal time to scroll on my phone while you're trying to get a pass down from me, that's rude.
Why? It's me time.
No. That is time on your calendar that happens every day at the same time that you have to devote to someone else, and that's your peer. And you have to show your peer the respect that they deserve to help get them set up for their shift.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly important to me as a leader to make sure my relief has everything they need to get to be successful. Not just my team, not just my team members, but my relief, my peer. All of my peers need to be successful, and it's important to me that everybody has that same outlook, because if one's not succeeding, none of us is succeeding. We're all a team, you know. If I'm a coach and I got 3 other coaches that I work with, and one coach is not pulling their weight or not doing what they need to do or supporting each other, then we're all not supporting each other correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Because either someone's doing too much, someone's not doing enough, animosity is created, and toxicity becomes rampant. And that bleeds into your hourly team.
Oh, yeah. So
as much as it's important to take care of yourself and to take that time for yourself, it's 100% necessary. You have to be strategic. And I've worked with people in the past that I don't get breaks, so I'm just going to, do this now. Well, now we're having a pass down. Now we're having a handoff meeting. Now we're talking peer to peer, and now that's just rude.
Mm-hmm.
So, as important as it is, it's equally as important to be strategic about it.
Yeah,
because you do need to take time. You do need to take, and if you want to watch a couple funny reels on your phone for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, so that you can forget about the fact that you're missing a deadline or whatever, and that's going to get you centered again so that then you can execute, take that. Absolutely. Heck yes. Close your office door. I mean, I don't know, some places may frown upon this, but even if it's throw a do not disturb sign on the doorknob for 15 minutes or whatever, or at break or something like that, and if that's what you need to be that extreme to be able to disconnect, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Within reason.
And it's the longer you wait to take your time in the day, the more you're building frustration and stress and anxiety on yourself, and you're burdening your ability to better take on your challenges that are occurring in the day.
Yes.
Don't take your time too early in the day, because then you probably didn't have a lot that was negative in the front half of your day, and now the recharging portion at the end of your day, well, you just flipped that coin. So finding that balance in the middle somewhere to where you're in the middle of meetings and you've got this 15-minute period to yourself and you can just sit somewhere and have that time to yourself and just be able to disconnect, and no one's going to find you because you've said, I don't want to be bugged for 15 minutes.
Yep.
People should have that ability to respect that. Your boss takes a break, your peers take a break, you should be able to take a break. And if your leader is not allowing you to that time to take a break, then maybe you should ask yourself, is this the person that I want to continue to give my time to?
Yep.
Because if they can't respect your time in the middle of the day, are they respecting your time when you go home? Are they respecting your time when you're on vacation?
Yep.
Are they allowing you to have your disconnect time? Because frontline leaders, we're balancing all three worlds. We need our space. We need to take care of our foundation. We need to take care of the business. We got to balance it all. But if there's not a balance with all three of these, one of them is getting eaten alive.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you the first one's getting eaten alive is you as a person.
Yep.
And no one wants to see the happy, smiley, go lucky, motivated, and engaged leader lose all that potential, because on both ends of the spectrum, they're getting eaten alive and then they have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
They just don't.
I felt that.
I felt that too. And it's not fun.
No.
It's not an incredible feeling, and it's a defeating feeling, actually. And like when I look at all three of these pieces, it's kind of like a Venn diagram. You've got the real world, and you've got the political world, the business world, and they diverge on the top portion of this Venn diagram. And then you have your personal space on the bottom, or it might as well be within the overlap of both of these worlds. And the bigger your personal space is, you're taking away from one thing or the other. You got to find that balance that's perfect between making sure the business is taken care of, because you have people that you report to every day, and then you have your team that you interact with every day, and you have to be able to help manage and influence and lead and empower both sides.
Yep. So I've heard you talk about kind of like that mental model, or that model of business, being up and down a chain.
Mm-hmm.
And then that companies are trying to go to more of like a circular diagram,
Mm-hmm.
where, so basically, so it doesn't look like senior leadership and above is above the hourly workforce, that we're all in this together. Can you explain a little bit about that diagram and what your feelings are surrounding that?
So what I've seen, what I've heard, is they're calling it the servant circle or something. I'm looking more into this because I'm really curious about it. The workforce is at the heart of every business.
Yes.
And a lot of the new industry is going to this diagram where, rather than having the leadership workforce filtering through their leader and then across to other organizations above them, quote unquote, as you put it, they're the main heart of the business, or the main circle. Then they have their leader, which is attached to them. But then next to the leader on the circle outlining them, they have the support partners: safety, quality, industry, ICQA, inventory, whatever it is. All these support teams surround the workforce organization chart so that everybody has their influence on the day-to-day operation. It's not just the leader.
Right. And it really encompasses how World 3 and World 1 interact.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked for leaders before that they're up here at the top of the chain. They want any information filtered through the frontline leader that the workforce needs or wants or has concerns or gripes or anything under the sun. They want that. They want the buffer to be the frontline leader, and that creates a lot of animosity from the hourly workforce, because when I was an hourly worker, it meant a lot when a senior leader took the time to have a meeting with us once a month and talk to us about how the business is performing, how our impact affects the business. Oh shoot, when meet budget for my cartons per hour goal, it has these effects on the business, and that equates to stronger stocks, stronger portfolio for the company. Could lead to a better wage increases down the road, when they look at cost of living every year, whatever that company does to incentivize their team, right? Though that information was brought back to me, and so I understood how I impacted the business, how my performance for the company impacted the business. And I think it's much more impactful to an hourly person when a senior leader gives that information. They hear from their supervisor every day. They want to hear the bigger picture stuff from the bigger leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I'll stick by that. The bigger leaders, the ones with the bigger title, because a leader can lead from any level, but that title carries weight positively or negatively.
Yep.
It just does.
Mm-hmm.
You're the CEO of Walmart, one of the biggest companies in the world, right? No, we don't want to really name drop companies, but this is just an example. You're kind of a big deal, right? Jeff Bezos, kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wouldn't expect Jeff Bezos to go and to Amazon distribution centers and address the team. I don't know if he does or doesn't. I have no idea. I don't work for Amazon. Point being is the senior leaders below him, or in that circle diagram that you're talking about, still need to be connected to the people. And it can't always be that frontline leader that makes that connection. They have to make that a connection too. It doesn't have to be an everyday thing. I do a daily directional setting meeting every morning with my team. That's my time. That's my time with my team. That's my time to set expectations for the day, give them a heads up on things that are coming down that are maybe happening. Like currently we're doing a lot of construction in our facility, so it's a good time to let them know, hey, stay out of this area today. There's going to be extra workers, yada, yada, safety topics. We should be talking about more like cost stuff, but we're in that phase right now where that's not built into our model yet. Working on it.
Mm-hmm.
But some of those cost numbers, really, it's more impactful when it comes from a senior leader.
Well, and because they're more ingrained in that portion of the business.
Yep.
Like being a frontline leader, your whole job is your team achieving goals every day, you influencing, inspiring, motivating their desired results.
Yes.
And seeing it come to fruition. Your boss and above, their whole goal is for you to feel empowered and able to do your job as best you can. And they're going to look at data. They're going to look at the metrics. They're going to look at other things from a different perspective, because they can detach from the real world a lot more frequently than a frontline leader can.
I mean, budgets don't always yell at you. I say they don't always, but sometimes they might.
Yeah, they can have big red bold numbers saying, "Hey, we are in trouble."
But it's their job, because they see that budget every day, that they know what we're up against financially, to translate that to the hourly workforce.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in the budget meeting every day. I'm not part of that level of management. I'm there solely for the people. So it is my responsibility to make sure their needs are met.
Yeah.
So having that assistance for World 3 to interact with World 1 is crucial to keeping an hourly workforce satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And most adults, when they hear something that they don't want to hear from leadership, and there's a why behind it from upper management, we wanted to do these things for you, we couldn't because unfortunately, we didn't perform well here, which cost us X amount of dollars, which took that away from our budget, yada, yada. That explanation, they might be kind of bitter about it, but then it's my job as a frontline leader to say, okay, so how can we fix it? How can we do better next quarter? And start engaging with my team to come up with ways to help our business perform better. Now that we have this information, let's do something positive with it.
And it shouldn't be solely on you as a frontline leader to have every one of these conversations, because it's not that you're not equipped to have these conversations.
Yep.
It's that, like you said, your team sees you every day.
Yep.
They get information from you. It's not the same every day, but when it comes to things that we have no power over, or things that we ultimately don't get a say in, when your boss says, oh, yep, you're going to say you own this because you need to be on our side of this, not on their side of this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not fair to me because I didn't make that decision. Maybe there's a better leader out there that can hold that and say that, yes, I'm going to 100% own this decision, even though I didn't make it. I am not that kind of leader that can just own every decision my boss makes. I still struggle with the filtering. I still struggle with taking that over. But they should be able to come down and, in front of my team, express those concerns or that point.
The phrase, when I've made a decision, that means we've made a decision, is a very toxic statement.
Mm-hmm.
Because did you give me the opportunity to challenge that decision? Did you give me the opportunity to weigh in and give my concerns maybe a different perspective? If you didn't, yes, I can convey to my team appropriately, we're not doing this because of these reasons. But that doesn't mean it was my decision.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't.
And it doesn't mean I'm going to throw my boss under the bus. But hourly people, especially the ones tenured hourly team members, can see right through the BS. And I can phrase it the most appropriate way, but they're going to make their own biased conclusion
mm-hmm.
to whatever I say.
Yep.
No matter what. So that's why it's important when a major decision is made for a senior leader to step up and say, we've made this decision. My coaches are following my direction because I feel that this is important for these reasons. And we're not there yet to do these things. And I believe we can get there, but we just got to take a step back for a couple weeks and reevaluate how we're conducting our business. And I think if we all take a moment to reflect on what's transpired, you'll see where I'm coming from.
Yep.
And most people, you're never going to get to all of them, but most people will be like, dang, they got a point.
It's because you're coming armed and ready for the conversation, and you have all the points and you have backup. There's not many leaders that I can think of that you could ask them any question and they're going to have every answer.
Yeah.
They're going to need to have someone to help them through some things. And when there's those leaders that say, this is our decision, this is what we're going to stick with, and then figure out an answer for it or figure out a way to answer that question and own it, and like passing all of the buck to you,
mm-hmm.
It feels bad. It feels negative. It feels toxic, and it feels like I'm not empowered to be on your side. I'm empowered to dislike you.
Well, I'm empowered to do what I need to do to keep my job.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to get fired.
Like an Office Space, the guy that's interviewing.
And I don't want, nobody wants to work in that environment.
No.
They want to, people and inherently want to be heard. Doesn't mean they have to be right. Doesn't mean everything has to go their way. But they want to be heard. They want to be able to say what's on their mind and not have repercussion for it, but they want to be able to voice their opinion, especially if it's something they're passionate about.
Exactly.
Something that affects their day-to-day. They want to be able to say, hey, this really sucks because of these reasons. Is there any wiggle room here? No? Okay, we'll make it work.
Mm-hmm.
But at least I know why now.
Yeah. And it's being able to lead from that level to your level, and then from your level back up. I hate that phrase. I hate that I just said that. I don't like the leading up and leading down.
It's been a phrase that has been used for a long time, and it will take time to change.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not the kind of person that enjoys thinking that I'm leading down or I'm leading up. I'm
not to segue off of this, but it reminds me of an episode of How I Met Your Mother of Barney starts talking about the chain of screaming, and then it ends up becoming a circle of screaming.
Yes.
It kind of reigns true, right? Like what the mental model of how organizations should be leading, not up and down the chain, but it should be a circle.
Mm-hmm.
Very much reminds me of that.
Yeah.
And how much it's meant to be funny, but it kind of reigns true in a way.
Yeah. Like when there was this one leadership class I took a couple years ago where someone had said the words, "Be good at leading up, across, and down at all times." And I asked them why. It's like, why can't we just lead? Why does there need to be a direction to this? Well, your boss is above you. Your team is below you. Your peers are on your level. And I was like, well, why can't we just all be on the same team and we influence the same way?
Yeah.
Like I don't believe in talking at my team or talking to my boss. I believe in talking with my team, with my peers, with my boss.
I almost get offended when people on my team call me the boss. I am not nobody's boss.
Well, it's like the topic we have with Jed, the conversation we have with Jed about breaking down boss. There's a negative connotation.
Yep.
All three of us did not like that word for a very good reason.
Yep.
Looking at like shared experiences, looking at World 1, World 2, World 3, the real world, your personal space, and then the business world. Like being able to balance them all, being able to take what you need from each of them every day, grow from them, learn from them, overcome obstacles is important.
Yeah. But I think all of this conversation ties back to taking care of yourself.
Oh yeah.
You have to be able to give what you need to give to your team. You have to be able to give what you need to give to World 3, to the political side, the corporate side. But the only way you can do that is if you take time for yourself. Is if you recharge your batteries. It might be meditation. It might be prayer. It might be reading a book that has nothing to do with work. It might be, a fantasy game that lets you detach for a few minutes here and there, or on your days off or whatever. But do things that promotes your well-being.
Yep. And it's the most successful leaders will find time to ground themselves, to recenter, so they can stay successful. If you're constantly running around with your head cut off, or constantly running around not sure what's going on, are you leading people at that point? You're shaking your head at me.
No, you're not leading people.
Okay. You have to be able to not maintain control, but maintain ability to observe and direct.
When you said that, the image that popped in my head was the Tasmanian devil flying around, just making a mess of everything.
Everything and anything. But the most ambitious leaders need a space to retreat to.
Yes.
They need their time amongst the chaos of every day. Now, make it an exercise, make it a daily thing. No matter what you're doing, find 15 minutes that is structured. Playing cards, like solitaire. I love playing solitaire. It's a great way to disconnect. People look at me like I'm crazy that I would rather play solitaire than look at a work email. I'd rather see if I can do it physically instead of on a computer, because it causes me to think.
Yep.
The computer will do it for you, but I can do it physically and actually have something tangible.
Yep.
Or go for a walk, or call a friend, or get some fresh air, or eat your lunch and not be bothered. And one of my favorite things to do was I stopped playing cards. I would just start having lunch. But when the team came in and one of them wanted to talk about something, the rule was no work-related conversations and nothing that's gonna drag me back into work for 15 minutes. If you can handle both of those rules, have a seat.
Yeah.
If you can't, can it wait 15 minutes?
Yeah.
You'd be surprised at the number of things that you can get positively out of that.
Yep. Something that I'm not very good at, because I pour everything in that I have into my job, and it's something that I'm working on getting better. And so I'm glad that you brought this up. I'm glad that you brought this up as an idea to discuss, because it is incredibly crucial, especially when you take a step back and just talk about it, and you start to see all the points of your day. You start reliving your day in your head. Man, I could have taken 15 minutes there. Man, I could have taken 10 minutes there. Man, I had a 20-minute block there that I could have detached, and I didn't. Like,
yeah,
you know. So, I'm already picturing times in my day that I know that I could take that 15 minutes pretty easily. So it's a good exercise.
Middle of your day. Not too early, not too late. As close to the middle as possible.
Well, the way I usually do my day is, I usually start work around 4:30 in the morning, and then that time between like 7:30, I should say 7:15 and 7:45 is usually a fairly open spot, because I come in early so that I can get certain tasks done and out of the way that are morning tasks. That way I have that moment to breathe, and I just need to be better about taking it. I'm already setting myself up to do it.
Yeah.
I just don't do it.
Don't forfeit your time and say it's not worthy.
Yep.
Give yourself that time. But I definitely look forward to having more conversations about the three worlds, breaking them down individually, having some other topics that I know are going to go into this in different ways for our listeners. If you are listening, post some ideas, some things that you're curious about that you want to ask about the different worlds, maybe some things that you view, and then help us with this conversation, but also just stay tuned.
I mean, it's always about perspective. So any perspective you guys can provide from your days, or tricks that you've got that help you accomplish these types of goals, let us know.
Yeah. And remember, this is our perspective. I'm by no means an expert, but I have a lot of time spent in leadership. So I have some stories to tell, some things that I've learned, and I want to help whoever wants to listen take away some things.
It's all about growth.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why we journal.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning into this episode of our Leadership Journal here on Table Talk. Have a great night. See you on the next one. Bye.